I want to start with a question. When was the last time you played? Not exercised, not competed, not networked at a social event. I mean, played, did something for no reason other than the pure absorbing joy of doing it. If you had to think about it, that might be the whole point of this talk. There's a moment that stays with me. A few years ago, I watched a group of children playing in a park, building something out of mud and sticks with total fierce concentration. No instructions, no prizes, no adults hovering, just complete absorption in a world they invented. And I noticed something uncomfortable. I was jealous, not of the mud, but of that quality of attention, that unself conscious, unhurried presence, that willingness to just make something for the sheer love of making it. At some point, most of us stopped doing that. And today, I want to make that case backed by science, by history, and honestly, by common sense that stopping was a mistake. That play is not a reward for productivity. It is not a childhood phase we outgrow. Play is one of the most powerful forces in human development, creativity, and well being. And we are in the middle of a quiet crisis because we have forgotten that. Part 1. What is play really? Let's get clear on what we are talking about, because play is one of those words that sounds obvious until you try to define it. The psychologist Stuart Brown, who has spent decades studying play across species and cultures, describes play as any activity that is intrinsically motivated, personally directed, and done for its own sake. Not for an outcome, not for approval, for the experience itself. That's what separates play from performance. When a child builds a tower of blocks, they aren't trying to become an architect. When you doodle in a meeting, you are not planning an art show. There is no audience, no grade, no KPI. The activity is the point. By that definition, play takes many forms. It can be physical, running, wrestling, dancing. It can be creative, making music, writing, drawing. It can be social, joking around, storytelling, games. It can be quiet, daydreaming, tinkering, puzzles. What unites all of them is that same quality, voluntary, intrinsically rewarding, absorbing. And here's something fascinating. Play is not uniquely human. Every mammal plays. Rats play, dolphins play, ravens play. Even octopuses have been observed doing things with no apparent survival value that looks suspiciously like messing around. Why would evolution preserve something so apparently frivolous across so many species? The answer, it turns out, is that play is anything but frivolous. It is how young animals and young humans develop the neural architecture they need to thrive as adults. Neuroscientist Jacques Panksepp identified a dedicated play circuit in the mammalian brain, a deep, ancient system that generates the urge to play and the pleasure of it. When you deprive the young rats of play, they develop poorly. They become anxious, socially clumsy, and bad at reading social cues. Restore their playtime and they recover. We are not so different. Studies on children who have limited free play show similar patterns: difficulties with impulse control, emotional regulation, and social problem solving. And yet, over the last 4 years, free unstructured playtime for children in Western countries has declined dramatically, replaced by scheduled activities, screens, and academic pressures that starts earlier and earlier. We are running a large uncontrolled experiment on our children, and we are starting to see the results. Part 2. What play does to the brain. But let's move beyond childhood, because this isn't just a story about kids. This is about you right now as an adult. What does play do to the human brain? First, it builds neural connections. Play involves novelty, exploration, and improvisation, all of which stimulate the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which researchers sometimes call fertilizer for the brain. It promotes the growth of new neurons and strengthens the connections between them. Play, in a very literal sense, grows your brain. Second, play is where creativity lives. There is a reason so many breakthroughs happen in the shower, on a walk, or during a doodle session, not during intense focused work. When we are in a playful state, we loosen our grip on habitual thinking. We make unusual connections. We are more willing to try something and be wrong. The mathematician Henry Poincaré described working furiously on a mathematical problem for weeks, getting nowhere, then stepping away for a holiday. As he was boarding a bus, not thinking about the problem at all, the solution appeared fully formed in his mind. He hadn't wasted those weeks of effort. But the breakthrough came in a moment of mental relaxation, what we might now recognize as a playful, wandering state of mind. This is not a coincidence. It reflects what we now know about the brain's default mode network, the set of regions that activate when we are not focused on a task. Far from being idle, this network is enormously creative. It's where we make sense of our experiences, imagine future possibilities, and synthesize ideas from different domains. And it only gets to run when we step back from directed effort. Play, real, unhurried, aimless play, is one of the best ways to activate it. Third, play reduces stress. Not just psychologically, but physiologically. Laughter, one of play's most reliable byproducts, decreases cortisol and adrenaline, the stress hormone that in chronic excess damage the cardiovascular system, suppresses the immune system, and literally age us faster. There is a reason we say we are playing when the stakes are low. Play is a low stakes mode of engagement with the world. And a brain that regularly experiences low stakes engagement is a brain that's more resilient when the stakes are high. Part 3, the play deficit and its costs. So, if play is so good for us, why aren't we doing more of it? There are several forces working against us. The first is productivity culture. We live in a world that relentlessly values output. Time that doesn't produce something measurable feels wasted. Play, by definition, doesn't produce anything measurable and it gets squeezed out. We feel guilty about it. We call it a waste of time. We frame leisure in terms of how it makes us more productive, as though that's the only legitimate reason to rest. This is a trap. The moment you start playing in order to be more productive, you have undermined the thing that makes play work. You have turned it into work. The second force is screens. I'm not going to be alarmist about this. Screens aren't inherently bad and there's genuine play to be found online. But passive consumption, scrolling, watching, reacting is not play. It's stimulation without agency, engagement without creation. And it tends to crowd out the quieter, slower, more genuinely playful activities, making things, exploring outside, goofing around with other people in real time. The third force is something I would call fear of looking foolish. The older we get, the more we care about appearing competent, adult, in control. Play requires a willingness to be bad at something, to try things that might fail, to be silly. And for many adults, that vulnerability is deeply uncomfortable. But here's what self-unconsciousness costs us. It costs us the beginner's mind, the openness and curiosity that makes learning possible, the willingness to experiment that drive innovation. Some of the most creative and successful people I have read about in science, in business, in the arts have in common a kind of persistent playfulness, a refusal to take themselves too seriously, a delight in asking what if and following it wherever it goes. That is not accidental. Part 4, reclaiming play. So, how do we bring play back into our lives? Not as a productivity hack, not as a scheduled activity, but as a genuine, nourishing part of how we live. I have a few thoughts. First, notice what you actually enjoy, not what you are supposed to enjoy. Not what looks good on social media. What genuinely absorbs you, where time disappears, where you forget to check your phone, where you feel like yourself. Stuart Brown talks about play history, asking people to remember the activities that gave them joy as children. Not because we should all go back to doing those exact things, but because they reveal something true about our play personality. Some people come alive through physical movements, others through making things, others through games and strategy or music or storytelling or jokes. The medium matters less than the quality of engagement for it. Second, protect time for it. not just white spaces in your schedule, though that matters too, but psychological permission. If you feel guilty the moment you start doing something unproductive, you are not really playing, you are tolerating yourself. Play requires a certain trust that this time has value, even especially if nothing comes of it. Third, play with other people. Human beings are deeply social creatures, and some of the richest play happens in the presence of others. Not structured group activities, though these can be great, but the loose improvisational, riff on each other quality of playful conversation, shared jokes, collaborative making. This is where culture actually gets made, where friendships deepen, where the awkward, wonderful, unexpected things happen that we remember for decades. Fourth, lower the stakes. You don't need to be good at it. One of the most playful things I have encountered is this: the idea of the bad art night, where a group of people deliberately try to make terrible paintings. The goal is to be gloriously, laughably bad. And in the process, people relax, laugh, comment, and often accidentally make something interesting. Because when you are not trying to be good, you are free to be real. And finally, take it seriously. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but I mean, don't dismiss play as trivial, as childish, as something you will get around to when you have finished everything else. Everything else will never be finished. Play is not a reward at the end of a long to-do list. It is a part of what makes you a full human being. Closing. I want to end where we started, with that question. When was the last time you played? If the answer is I can't remember, I would like to gently suggest that something important has gone missing. Not because play is a luxury, but because it is one of the core human experience. One of the ways we make sense of this world, connect with each other, and access the deeper, stranger, more interesting parts of ourselves. The philosopher G.K. Chesterton once wrote, "The true object of all human life is play. Earth is a task garden. Heaven is a playground." I'm not sure about heaven, but I think he was onto something about play being the thing we are really after, the quality of engagement, delight, and freedom that we are always reaching toward, even in our most serious work. The best scientists describe their research as play. The best teachers play with ideas alongside their students. The best companies, the ones that generate genuinely new things, create cultures where it's safe to tinker, to be wrong, to follow an interesting question into the unknown. We do not play because we have spare time. We have rich, full lives because we play. So I want to leave you with a small challenge. Not a goal, not a metric, just an invitation. This week, do something playful, something that has no point but itself, something you do even if no one knew about it, something that makes you a little less sure where it's going. And notice what happens in your mind, in your thinking, in the quality of your attention. I suspect you'll remember why it mattered. Thank you.